Welcome back to the Donut Racing Show, everybody, where we bring a jumbo pickle in a pouch mindset to the cucumber sandwich eating podium of Formula One racing. You know the catering over there at Formula One is on point. My name is Nolan Sykes. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, my favorite auto journalists and authors of Racing with Rich Energy by the book. We got Elizabeth Blackstock and Alanis King. How are you guys?
Hi.
I'm here. It's Wednesday when you're listening to this, but we're 3 days behind. We're in Australia.
Yeah, it's all weird on this one because the race, Australian Grand Prix 2023, we'll get to it. One of the first weird race of the season, I think. The first very entertaining race of the season. Saturday night, very late at night for the two Texans. Not too late for myself.
It was great for you.
Well, I was actually in New Mexico, so I was on in a different time zone. But it was still late. I'm a morning person. I don't stay up very late, so I did have to kind of hype myself up to stay up. But luckily, there was a lot of hijinks in this race that did hype me up.
So Elizabeth and I were talking before we started recording, and she did the nap approach. So she went to bed at 7 p.m., and then she woke up at midnight for the race. I did the if I nap, I'm going to be miserable approach. So I just stayed up, and I decided at about 10:30 p.m., I'm going to do my taxes.
Oh, I should actually do those. Just remembered I have to do my taxes. Thank you.
It was rough. I'm telling you, 11 p.m. taxes on a Saturday night. Like,
That sounds like hell.
like that's just not what you picture when you picture adulthood, but that is adulthood.
That is not the vibe, as they say.
Elizabeth's asleep. I'm doing my taxes.
Texas contingent was great.
Yeah.
And Nolan was on vacation.
I was on vacation. Me and my girlfriend, we were driving through the American Southwest. We stopped in Flagstaff on the way. We stayed with her aunt in Albuquerque. Excellent city. Shout out Albuquerque. Then we drove down to the Carlsbad Caverns, which is a spectacular place. You must go. It's this huge underground cave system, big enough to hold the U.S. Capitol building twice inside.
Oh,
It is magnificent. There are tons of stalactites, stalagmites, all sorts of rock formations underneath after eons of water dripping down off of these roofs. It's awesome.
I got a thing for caves, honestly.
This isn't even like a cave is a cave, right? This is a wonder of the world with all the formations underneath. I'm serious. I've been in lava tubes. Flagstaff has some lava tubes. Pretty cool, pretty dark, but formation-wise, pretty uninteresting. Anyway, that's besides the point.
Wow.
I have an announcement for you guys.
Okay. Tell us.
Big thank you to our sponsor this week, Valvoline Motor Oil. Extended protection, full synthetic, high mileage is Valvoline's best performing motor oil ever for engines with more than 75,000 miles. That includes cars like mine. I've got Valvoline in my car, and you can too. You can buy Valvoline wherever motor oil is sold. Make sure you get some Valvoline in your car today. Thank you very much, Valvoline, for sponsoring this episode. After we ascended from the caves because the elevator was broken, by the way. There's an elevator to get down. There's also a 1.25 mile hike you can do. Doesn't sound very long, but you are hiking up the height of the Empire State Building.
Jesus.
If you're not ready for it, it sucks. Anyway, we get out of the caves. We're about to leave. I'm with my girlfriend, and I pull out of my pocket an engagement ring and ask her to marry me.
Nolan!
And she says, yes.
Yes! Congratulations! Oh, that's so exciting!
Wow.
Oh, that's such a nice spot. Oh, congratulations to you too.
Nolan kept this a secret. Nolan did not post this
I
anywhere.
did, yeah.
He did
Yeah.
not say anything, so
One
he
sec.
could announce this right now.
All right, you can post it now. You're good. We've been
The big news drop. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cute.
we've been holding
That
on
I
to
feel
that
so
for a couple days.
honored.
Thank you
Yeah.
for including us, Nolan. That was
Of
so
course.
exciting.
Yeah. What I would not recommend if you're going to go to Carlsbad Caverns is bringing the ring with you in your pocket the entire time. I was very, very nerve-wracking to have a ring like that in your pocket.
Get the cargo paint with a zipper.
Well,
cargo
that
pants
could have been a good idea.
For the proposal. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, it was like with me the whole trip, and I had to think of different ways to like hide the ring in the truck and try to make sure she didn't go into my jacket for whatever reason. Yeah.
This is so funny to me. This is so funny to me because when I got engaged, I picked out the ring and we bought it together. And then we set up a tripod and we picked out the spot and then we put the timer on the tripod to take our own proposal photos.
That's great.
Yeah, I was laying in bed and I was like, hey, you want to get married? And my husband was like, so I gave him a hematite ring off of my finger that I bought for $5 at the occult store. And that was that.
There you go. Yeah, we designed the ring together and stuff, and she knew that like the ring was somewhere, yes, but she did not expect it at Carlsbad Caverns, which I was very excited about. Yeah.
Wow.
Really great trip, obviously. I'm back. Soulburner is back.
Soulburner is back. You listened to the episode, Nolan.
I did, yeah.
He's back
I was curious.
And he's engaged.
Yeah, no, I would listen to that show even if I wasn't on it. So
we missed you. We're so glad you're back, Soulburner. Soulburner is engaged.
That's right.
And in today's episode, we are going to talk about the Australian Grand Prix, which Soulburner, Nolan, referred to in our group chat as the silliest race I think I've ever watched.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to start off with qualifying. The grid was a actual full-on Red Bull sandwich with Max Verstappen at the very tippy top on pole and Sergio Perez out in Q1 after failing to set a time. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but he started at the very back of the grid. Mercedes had a great qualifying with George Russell in P2 and Lewis Hamilton in P3 on the starting grid.
Not too shabby.
Lewis's mortal enemy, Fernando Alonso, was set to start behind him in P4, with Ferrari's Carlos Sainz, the king of spinning into gravel, in P5, despite taking said spin in the gravel. Other things to note was Alex Albon qualifying P8, which is his best grid spot for Williams, and Nico Hulkenberg hugging that P10 placement. That's where he started every single race this year.
That's consistency.
That is.
I wasn't able to watch qualifying. I just had service and then saw the results and was like, all right, Mercedes, they're creeping up there.
It was really exciting. I had good hopes for them this race. I was like, we're in Australia. We're like back. This is now the official start of the season. I'm forgetting the other two races. We're starting over here, and Mercedes has a shot. It's great.
Yeah, I feel like the other two didn't happen. I mean, we start in Australia. That's where I'm starting.
If you watch the race, you probably already know what the major story is going to be this week. But aside from the 4 red flags, a lot of other things happen. I thought it was an actually pretty interesting race, okay? First up, let's talk about Alpine. Pierre Gasly had a great race going on before the restart fiasco near the end. He was running P5 behind Carlos Sainz pretty much the entire race. He did a really great job gaining positions and holding them, I will say. And, during our group chat during the race, I think I brought up Pierre like 4 or 5 times, I think. I'm rooting a lot for him this season. He's got the juice. If he just had a better car, I think he is truly world champion material in my opinion. The dude just is always bringing it. It's worth noting, however, that Gasly is also very close to a race ban. He's got 10 points on his super license. He only needs 2 more before he has to sit out a race. Last season, he was picking up penalty points at a pretty good clip. Despite having to be a little bit more careful this season, he's still bringing it. However, the stewards cut him some slack after the end of race collision that took both Alpines out at the end of the race, which we'll get into a little later.
I feel like I would respect Pierre Gasly a lot if he got a race ban.
I was praying to God that he would get that out of the way at the end of last year so he could come to Alpine with a new slate. Like, why not just rack up your points? Because then they reset and then you don't have any and then you're like back in biz. But he did not do that.
Could have been a real character building moment, but now he's got a more extended character building period where he has to race, get those points while also kind of walking on eggshells.
Nah, he's just going to find a race he doesn't want to go to and he's going to get penalties for that.
Yeah.
So Yuki Tsunoda finished 11th again. It's like the 3rd straight race this season. And AlphaTauri retweeted, You've got to be joking. P11 again. But Carlos Sainz got a penalty, and that moved Yuki up to 10th, and that is points.
That's points
So
right there.
Good
Point.
for him.
Yeah, that's point right there. You're
That
right.
is point right there.
You know, I'm happy for Yuki. I'm always rooting for him as well. I root for all the guys, you know this, but I like to see Yuki in the points finally this season.
Well, technically, they're all guys, Nolan. So which guys do you root for?
My
all
guys,
guys.
you know, Yuki's one of my guys, and I root
Okay.
for him. And I'm happy to see him
who
get
are
that
your
point.
guys, Nolan?
Pierre Gasly,
Okay.
Yuki Tsunoda,
Uh-huh.
the Ferrari boys,
Okay.
Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes George,
Mm-hmm.
Lando. Yeah, you know, I like to see Lando.
Multi-time boyfriend of the week winner, Lando
That's true.
Norris.
That
I
is
know.
true. He was on a good streak there. I think that about covers it.
That's
Yeah.
like half of them, Nolan. That is.
It's
gotta have the
good
boys.
a third of them. Yeah.
You know, Nolan, of all the people you listed, none of them have won a race this season.
I know.
But Max won, and it was his first win in the Australian Grand Prix. By lap 46, he had more than 11 seconds on second place. And then he had a lockup, and he went straight into the grass. And he was still like 7 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton.
It was insane. Yeah.
It was like, you almost wonder, like, did you just do that like for a little bit of fun? Like, what's going on? Because like you're bored. Did you just
F1
wanna prove-
scriptwriters called up on his radio and they were like, "Hey, can you just like do a little something? Just like
do
not a big one.
loop,
Yeah, just a little trip off in the grass.
and then come back and then win anyway.
Yeah, make it seem interesting. Give the people something to tweet about."
Well, I mean, it just kind of showed a little bit of a weakness for Max Verstappen, I think. One, when the man is not confident in his car, you can hear him start to get a little heated and almost start to make mistakes. I think that was a bit more apparent or a stronger factor when he was younger. Now that he's won twice, the maturity and experience is definitely starting to show, obviously. But there's still a little hint there. You know, the man can get a little heated when things aren't going exactly his way. And I think that's kind of the key exploit that other teams need to go after somehow in the future.
I think it's really interesting how different people get mad during a race. Like some people yell, and Lewis, he has like a phrase he says when he's disappointed in the team and a phrase he says when he's disappointed in himself. And I'm pretty sure one of them is guys and one of them is man. And I can't remember which is which.
Yep. Guys is definitely when he's, disappointed with the team.
Yeah, I think so. And
Guys.
then man is like
Yeah.
disappointed in myself.
Exactly.
It's like
Exactly.
intrinsic, like deep down. Ouch.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Mercedes boys a little later and their intricacies. But yeah, Max Verstappen heated behind the wheel, locking up those tires. I even told the group chat, I was like, I'm feeling a Red Bull mechanical issue right now.
Yeah,
And
I think we all were.
I was not correct, but we still got an interesting race anyway.
Maybe if there weren't those red flags.
Maybe.
On good news, McLaren finally has some points this season. They got a whopping 12 out of this round after a horrible start to the year. So now they are 5th in the World Constructors' Championship. It was really nice to see, actually, because Oscar Piastri is now the Australian on the grid. So he got his first points at his home race, despite starting P16. And his grandma also brought like homemade desserts to the McLaren garage, which I thought was really cute. I'm sure that probably helped.
You know who could study that? Christian Horner for the budget.
Yeah, have
Yeah, let's
grandma
get-
bring them.
So,
Have
some
grandma
a
bring.
potluck style catering. Yeah.
You can't pay
Save
for
some money.
catering if grandma is catering. So Christian, take note, Christian. You can save some money on this. But no, I think what's really funny is McLaren had no points before this, and now they have 12, and suddenly they're 5th. Wow, that's incredible.
There we go. Let's go. Speaking of another midfield team, Alfa Romeo's Valtteri Bottas went full Aussie this weekend. He was rocking a mullet, a vest, and a mustache, but unfortunately had a pretty disappointing race. He started from pit lane due to a suspension change and was one of the 2 remaining drivers to finish outside the points. The only driver who ended up behind him on track was Carlos Sainz, who got a tragic penalty at the end of the race, which we will cover in just a little bit.
I just want to take a moment so we can let this stat sink in. 12 drivers finished. Only 12.
And Valtteri was 12th. And like this season, it's been so rough. You know, kind of like Daniel Ricciardo, he comes in on the horse last year at the U.S. Grand Prix, and then he just kind of like putt-putts around the whole race.
Mm-hmm.
Like Valtteri, we love him, and he's just out there, like last.
He's
so
firmly
sad.
in his vibes only era.
Just vibes. It is completely vibes. But
I think what we've seen is that showmanship pre-race is usually not a good idea.
no,
There was
you got to be boring.
I think 2019 German Grand Prix. Mercedes had their Lederhosen uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was all German themed, and then they just like completely fell apart. The aforementioned horse of Daniel Ricciardo.
He would have been better off riding the horse on the track.
I think this actually is not just a racing lesson. I remember when I was a freshman in high school, we played in football. We were playing our rivals up in Paso Robles, and we decided that we would all get haircuts in many different fashions. I got a mohawk.
Oh, nice.
One of our health teacher, Mr. Faree, was also the wrestling coach, and he did the haircuts in one of the halls of the school. My mohawk started off straight at the top of my head, but then he gave me like a really gnarly curve down the back. It was pretty messed up looking.
And that wasn't on purpose, right?
No, it was on purpose. It was on purpose.
Oh, okay.
We all had hair. We were all looking like Sloth from the Goonies, and we went up to Paso Robles and got our asses kicked. So theatrics before sporting events, not a great idea. Just focus on the game.
Okay, let's talk about Checo's weekend. So in qualifying, they made a bunch of changes to the car due to technical issues discovered in FP3 ahead of qualifying. And then we get to qualifying and everything goes to hell. He goes off the track on right as he goes out in qualifying and brings out a red flag. He wasn't even able to get a lap time before his elimination in Q1. Like, dude is down and out, right? He claims that he had issues with the brake balance during qualifying, so the team replaced the front brake friction material ahead of the race. But my guy, Helmut Marko, if you need to hear some drama, Helmut Marko will provide it. This dude...
I was going to say, go to Sky Germany after any Red Bull event that happens, and you'll find some Helmut Marko quotes.
I don't understand how the liability that Helmut Marko presents, I don't understand how that's worth keeping him around. Because he just goes and he talks shit about everyone, okay?
For the audience, guys, who is Helmut Marko?
He's the junior development driver at AlphaTauri. Excuse me, that's what he is. So he has a job, and it's talking trash about everyone.
He finds the talent and tries to bring them to Red Bull, gets them onto Red Bull, and makes sure that they're up to snuff for the team.
Helmut Marko's job is to talk about everyone and just start drama. And so there were some comments to Sky Germany from Helmut, who said that Sergio already had problems with the engine settings in FP3. I think that made him uncertain, and that's why he slipped. And he was like talking about Sergio's like confidence and like uncertainty and all this stuff. And it's just like, man, he just goes out and says stuff, doesn't he?
He's messy and he lives for drama.
The first and third practice sessions were both at a reasonable pre-bed hour for me. So I watched those surprisingly. And like, he did have issues the whole weekend. Like, it wasn't like this was just something that happened and they made it up. Like, he had actual legitimate problems with the car. And somehow this is his confidence? I don't think so.
I just love the fact that like everything that goes on at Red Bull has so many undertones, and they're just like everybody is after each other and like saying stuff about each other. I love it. I think it's beautiful. That's the kind of entertainment I need. So Checo didn't set a lap time during qualifying, so he had to start at the back of the grid. Red Bull, because of that, decided to take the opportunity to replace his energy store and control electronics. That's the third he has taken this season, and only 2 are allowed. Wow. Because of that, he was forced to start from pit lane. Dang. So if you're going to start at the back anyway, you might as well start on pit lane, especially when there are going to be a bunch of red flags, right?
Maybe
they knew.
Yeah, it's like
they knew.
It's a very iRacing rookie move. Oh, just start from the pit lane so you You just get those safety points, get that safety rating, avoid the incidents. Little side tip, that's not the best way to learn how to race. Anyway, poor Sergio having to start from the back. But as we saw, or will see, he made a little climb through that field, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. But, he kind of had a slow start. I was very surprised for the first handful of laps that he didn't get further up. Of course, when you start from the pit lane, you're way behind the pack, right? But even after the restarts, he was kind of in the same position for a while. So field goes behind the safety car for lap 2 because Charles Leclerc is off in the gravel. He is done. He is out of the car. Safety car is out. Elizabeth just did a little cross. That was beautiful. Checo was 18th ahead of Valtteri and Charles Leclerc, whose car is at this point beached. The race restarts on lap 4, and by the time the next safety car came out, which was lap 7, he was in 15th. So the safety car comes out on lap 7 for Alex Albon. Checo gains 1 spot, passing Albon's parked car to put him in 15th. By lap 14th, he was still there. So, he's hanging around P15 for a long time, right? But by lap 21, he's up to 12th. Okay, we're moving. 2 laps later, he's back in the points. So we're doing all right. By lap
21 laps, almost not quite halfway through the race, but pretty far in.
Pretty far in. He's in the points, which he had some help with the safety cars and all the red flags and everything that happened, but still commendable. By lap 43, he's in 8th. 2 laps later, he's in 7th. We are moving. And after everything, after Carlos Sainz's penalty, he ends P5, which I really thought about 10 laps into this race, I was like, there is no way Checo makes it up to 5th. He's just not picking people off fast enough. I didn't think he was picking people off fast enough at the beginning of the race. It was slow moving, but he really picked up in that back half of the race, and it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Red Bull was hoping that he'd at least be able to get to the podium. So I think if I was Christian Horner, I'd still consider that a failure. But still, in the grand scheme of things, pretty impressive.
Don't give Christian any ideas.
I mean, it's Red Bull, not messiest, but the most demanding probably team to be on right now. You got Daniel Ricciardo waiting in the wings.
He's waiting just to jump in there.
Yeah, he the dedicated understudy that he is right now. He's ready to take that lead role. Sorry, we listen to a lot of musicals also on our drive, so I'm in full theater kid mindset at the moment. But yeah, he's ready to take that role over. He's ready to be Elder Armstrong in the Book of Mormon.
Speaking of Daniel Ricciardo, have we noticed the very obvious PR push on Daniel that started this weekend with the Australian Grand Prix? He's everywhere, more so than he has been the rest of the year. He was everywhere. I was like, is this
his home race? Well, if it continues, that's when I think we'll really notice it being a coordinated effort. It does make sense. It's kind of organic that it would start this weekend.
That's true. It was still just I would be feeling really uncomfortable if I'm Checo.
I like that they just they hired him as a show pony for a little while, just trot him out and look at my beautiful son.
And during, it was either during qualifying or the race, or at some point they pan the camera to him in the garage, and he smiles, and everybody just screams. Yeah. The crowd goes wild, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting."
So let's talk about Mercedes. Okay, we had some excellent action from the team on lap 1. I rewatched the highlight reel this morning, and man, lap 1 was awesome. You had George in P2 and Lewis in P3. Raring up to pass Max Verstappen. George actually got ahead of Max at turn 1 of the race. It was an excellent pass by George, very aggressive. I think Max was playing it kind of safe. I think maybe he might have been a little worried that George would give him some contact into turn 1. But man, awesome stuff from George.
This start, I was very surprised at how Max performed on the very start of the race. He just kind of sunk back into the Mercedes claws, which you don't usually see that in this era of Formula One. It's usually Max just takes off and goes. And it was very interesting.
So far this season, we haven't seen the best starts from Max. Something about getting that Red Bull off the line is pretty tricky for Max Verstappen. Lewis also passed Max with another awesome pass on the inside. Very daring maneuver, if you ask me. It was pretty close, and Max did have to go a little wide, which he did complain about to his race engineers, but it was a clean pass. There was no contact. It was very close, though. That first sector of Australia, I didn't really get to talk about this in our track walk because I was not there for that. This track, Australia, is deceptively difficult to navigate. And my only evidence for that is all the F1 that I've played in the past. And this track is really hard. Sector 1 is really hard, especially on starts. And when you're in a big group like this, it's a lot tighter than it looks. And the turns there's just a lot of almost 90-degree turns on this track. It's pretty difficult. And it always surprises me how well these drivers are able to navigate these under such high pressure and make passes like the ones that George and Lewis did. By lap 7, Lewis is on Russell's tail, and Russell says to his engineer, "Hey, mate."
You're asking me to manage and I'm being attacked by my own teammate.
After Lewis is using DRS to get closer. So yeah, kind of the same dynamic we saw last race with Sergio ahead of Max, and getting some conflicting team orders between the two drivers. If you're in George's position at this moment, you're maybe kind of second guessing whether or not your team wants you to win the race over Lewis.
I think this was a weird position, though, because Max was kind of right behind Lewis, too.
Yeah.
So there was no real option for Lewis to back off, because if he backs off, Max passes him very easily. Here's my question. If Mercedes were actually good, do we think this would be a very Lewis Nico 2016 vibe?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. If Mercedes was good, because the thing is that the bar is a lot lower. The stress is a lot lower because they are not competing for a title. They are just kind of hanging out. But if they were competing for a title and this car was good, this would be rough.
Yes, especially rough for George, I think, because Lewis has already been in this position before, battling a good teammate, losing to the teammate, but forcing that teammate to retire after he wins that championship as well. Maybe not forcing, but you get the idea. I don't know. It would be incredibly fun to watch. George also has the juice. This guy is also a future world champion given the right equipment. So maybe instead of going for the world championship, the battle for second place heats up a lot. We'll see. I mean, this Red Bull is so good. I just don't really see it happening this year already, unfortunately. What was it you said in the first episode, Alanis, that the season is usually settled by halfway through race 3? Is that what you said?
That's exactly it.
And I think you're dead on.
This is just how it happens. Not only because that's how Formula One works, because we have this difference in equipment and all of this, but also Formula One teams and drivers really settle into their roles. I do think public opinion on Mattia Binotto was one of the reasons he was out at Ferrari. Sure, Ferrari had all these issues, but Ferrari still has all of these issues with Mattia Binotto gone. Everyone just kind of settles into the public opinion, and the public opinion is Red Bull is good, Mercedes is slow, Ferrari is unreliable. And then that becomes the tale for the rest of the season.
So with Russell in the lead, a safety car comes out on lap 7. Russell comes into pit, which then puts him in P7 because everyone passes him. And then red flag comes out, leaving him in that position. Definitely a mistake on Mercedes' part, but sometimes you're not really certain what's going to happen. Toto Wolff, after the red flag, sends a message to George. Sorry, George, that screwed us. The red flag was great for Lewis, though, because he got to start at the front, although Verstappen was right behind him in P2. He gets that free pit stop under the red flag condition, which is something we'll talk about in a bit, and was able to change his front, and was also able to change his front wing out thanks to the red flag rules. So he was a little worried about damage to his front wing. There might have been a little bit of contact when he passed Verstappen, but because of the red flag, he's able to change that out and start from scratch, basically. After the race restarts, on lap 7, Verstappen and Hamilton have a pretty sweet battle for the lead for about 5 laps until Max is able to get close enough in Sector 2 to utilize his DRS, his overpowered DRS, mind you, the most powerful DRS on the grid right now, slips into that first position. And a lap later, he's already leading by 2 seconds on Hamilton.
Disgusting.
It was really funny when this happened because obviously, like, a lot of my friends live in the United States and it's 1 o'clock in the morning at this point. And once Max takes the lead, everybody was like, good night.
Yep.
Everybody just went to bed.
I mean, man, I know that it seems like the season might be over at this point, and functionally it might be. But it's moments like these 5 laps where they're battling super hard that I think it's important for you watching to really savor those moments. Because right now, I mean, Lewis, 7-time world champion, in my opinion, the GOAT. He has the most wins, after all. Battling basically Hamilton V2, right? Another young superstar who's on his own way to just racking up world titles. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool, you know?
It's the passing of the torch.
And also Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, and Fernando, another guy who has the juice, by the way. I think he could still win a title. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, savor it, guys. Like, this is pretty cool, especially with Aston Martin in the mix like that. By lap 17, unfortunately, we see the flaming car of George Russell. A lot of flames spurting out that exhaust. Pretty sad. That was a rough one to watch. He's able to get out of the car safely. This causes another virtual safety car.
Oh, so I'm sitting here watching this race, and my husband has been asleep for about 3 hours, right? He is out. He wakes up. He sees George Russell's car on fire, and he goes, "Ricky Bobby, you're on fire." And then he goes back to sleep. He just went right back to sleep.
It's all you needed.
Impeccable timing. By lap 20, Hamilton is complaining about his tires. Quote, "Alonso is pretty quick. I don't know if these tires will make it to the end." They were having a great battle as well. By lap 33, the hard tires on Hamilton's car do seem to be degrading more than usual because of the warm weather down there, down under. Hamilton's race engineer tells him, quote, "Fernando's trying to push you to use your tires. Don't fall for it." And lap 41, Lewis comes on the radio to say, "There's no way I'm losing out to him," regarding Alonso. Great battle between these two for the rest of the race. I loved it. You could savor it both directions, right? You got Hamilton versus Max. Once that's over, then you switch over to Hamilton versus Alonso. It's awesome. You couldn't write it, is what I'm trying to say. This season is something, we are seeing something special bubbling up this season. Maybe not for the championship fight, but for second place,
You're not
it's
wrong.
pretty exciting.
I forget how old Lewis is. Like, in terms of a Formula One driver, he's obviously not old, but
He's over the hill.
38. He's 38. He's over the Formula One hill. And so we just have Max versus Lewis, like the older guy versus the young kid. And then we go to Lewis versus Fernando. And it's just like the two old dudes going at it.
The old guy versus the elderly one.
This is like something that happens in like the 4th film of the franchise, right? Where it's like, oh, I got to fight this young guy, but I also have to fight my rival from the first movie at the same time? This is crazy. Like, it's really like dawning on me right now how cool this is. This is awesome. The bad guy from the first movie.
He's
And the bad guy from the 3rd movie.
Nolan has found
At the same
wonderful
time.
light in a season where Red Bull is going to run away with everything. Nolan has found it. Nolan is good. He is entertained.
This is awesome. And then his British young like protege beneath him also.
Yeah, freaking George
Yeah.
Russell over there like, "Can you tell my teammate to stop attacking me?"
Yes. Oh,
Sure.
This is good.
We'll work on that,
This is
George.
good
Yeah.
stuff. This is okay. This is great. A big thank you to our sponsor this week, Valvoline Motor Oil. Valvoline Extended Protection Full Synthetic High Mileage is their best performing motor oil ever for engines with more than 75,000 miles. Older cars need a motor oil that can handle the demands of aging engines. Once an engine passes 75,000 miles, the effects of wear, friction, heat, and deposits, they start to show. If engine parts aren't properly protected, they can wear down and lead to reduced gas mileage, lower horsepower, and a shorter engine life. Valvoline's Extended Protection Full Synthetic High Mileage Motor Oil provides the ultimate protection for engines with 75,000 miles or more. It's just one of the many reasons Valvoline's been trusted for over 150 years by people like you and me. I've got Valvoline in all my cars. I just went on a road trip in the low truck, and I used Valvoline High Mileage Extended Protection in low truck before I went on that trip. And you know what? She ran like a dream. So get Valvoline in your car today. Thank you very much, Valvoline Motor Oil. Let's talk about what we've kind of been alluding to the whole time. Liz?
The red flags.
We saw a lot this race, but if there is one thing we saw more than anything else, it was every flag but the green flag. We had plenty of yellows, we had plenty of virtual safety cars, but this race also saw a record-setting 3 to 4 red flags, and I say 3 to 4 because I am not convinced that fourth one counts. We'll get to that. We're in a position where we're debating the relative existence of a red flag,
and the relative existence of a lap.
Exactly. And I think this makes it the most NASCAR Formula One race of all time.
I completely agree.
Let's start this at the beginning. Let's set the scene. Charles Leclerc started P7 after it was a really disappointing weekend. It was garbage. And then he immediately spins off in turn 3 after a love tap from Lance Stroll on the first lap. It was bad news.
How do you feel about this as a Lance Stroll fan?
As a Lance Stroll fan, freaking good. Send him.
Okay.
Evaluate the front. Do whatever you got to do.
Elizabeth, you're going to make some people mad with that one.
Good.
Okay. All right.
That spin brought out our first full safety car and set the tone for the rest of this very shenanigans-filled race. It restarted on lap 4, but the green flag lasted maybe 3 laps. Alex Albon in the Williams was running so well. He had moved up to P6. When he went off track on lap 7, Formula One's lap-by-lap analysis said that he lost it on corner entry heading into turn 7. His rear tires let go, and then he spun off the track into the barriers. The big thing for us viewers at home was that he kicked up so much gravel onto the road that F1 decided to throw a red flag to clean it up. They also were double-checking the barriers, but mostly it was just the fact that the road was dirty. I probably could have swept that up in 30 seconds by the time the cars got around. It didn't seem like we needed a red flag, but we got one. This is what kind of kicked off the whole George Russell problems with his strategy because George had just pitted. Now suddenly, red flag, everyone gets to pit, everyone gets to stop, everyone gets to just start over. Strategy, throw it out the window. You can get new tires, you can work on your car. I was annoyed.
Okay, tell me more. I want to know more.
You need to call the flag right away if you are having that. You call the virtual safety car and now suddenly everyone's pitting. And if you're going to allow changes in the red flag period, you can't let people pit first and then let everyone else pit afterward. It's a Formula One rule that I adamantly disagree with. And I think that if they wanted to do something about it, they could find a way to let you work on the car after the safety, after you start lapping again, maybe, but I think it's dumb.
I feel like I agree, but also I take the side of you know what the rules are and that you operate within those rules and you have to anticipate that some dumb stuff is going to happen. So I was talking to a NASCAR driver about this one time and how they feel about the current championship format, which it used to be you collect points over 36 races and the person with the most points wins. Now it's you do eliminations and blah, blah, blah. And
it's
you go into the final race.
I hate it. It's so dumb.
You go into the final race and there are 4 drivers and the one who finishes first wins the championship. And I was like, doesn't it feel less legitimate to win a championship like that? And they were like, the person who wins the championship within that set of rules. So you go into the season knowing what the rules are, and that is how you operate. And if you are the best within those rules, it is a legitimate championship
Yeah.
and it is just like any other championship. And I was like, that's so fascinating. So when I think of this rule, sure, it kind of sucks. But also all the teams and all the drivers know the rules. And at the end of the day, in any racing series, you're at a disadvantage when you are in front because you have to make the decision before everybody else and also before chronologically something happens. And sometimes that risk works and sometimes it doesn't. And it's kind of like Mario Kart. It just levels the field.
I mean, I guess, but I think in this particular instance, especially when you're just seeing gravel on the track, like it doesn't trigger this thought of we have to do something drastic about this. Like I feel like almost anywhere else they would have swept it up and it would have been fine, or there appeared to be enough space for the cars to drive around it without accumulating any debris. But that's not my call to make, and I will have more to say about this in my Boyfriend of the Week selection.
Oh, wow.
But, yes, for the moment, the lineup at the restart was Hamilton, Verstappen, Alonso, Stroll, and Gasly in the top 5. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri were down in the last 2 of the top 10 positions, which was pretty great. And it was a standing restart, which I was here for that, actually. I love stoked.
That.
I love a good standing restart, and almost everyone opted for hard tires because they could, the thought was like, we're far enough along in this race that we don't have to pit again. Well, lo and behold, we find out what happened then. Since Hamilton was restarting first, Max kind of complained that Hamilton did not stay 10 car lengths behind the safety car, did not result in anything, but I think it's really funny that we have Max being upset about Lewis doing anything because he's not leading. And there was also a lot of chaos in the rear of the field that I don't think I'd noticed until I saw replays of this later. But like multiple people slowed down too fast and multiple people were like flying up the back. So they had to take evasive action into the gravel and they still restarted with no problem. They just sent it and decided we're going to do the restart anyway. Hamilton led, but that only lasted until DRS was enabled, at which point Verstappen just flashed by him like nobody's business.
Gone.
And that was that. After getting screwed over by that red flag, George Russell had moved back up to 5th place, while poor old Nick DeVries dropped to P17 after restarting 12th because he and Esteban Ocon touched.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. He got he almost spun in the same exact area that Charles Leclerc did. Almost had the same outcome.
Thankfully, it didn't happen, but my goodness. After that, we talked about the safety car that we got due to George Russell's car fire. After which the race seemed to be progressing in a respectable fashion.
It was fine, yeah.
Yeah, it was a race. It was a normal F1 race. And then Kevin Magnussen clipped the wall on lap 54 and straight up the force of that impact ripped the rubber off the tire.
It's insane actually to watch that.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
That's a big hit.
Yeah, you can watch the angle. It's actually on the official F1 highlight video for this race. The rear viewing angle of the camera, you see it happen, he smacks the wall and then the tire just not the wheel, the tire itself comes off the wheel and flies 30 feet in the air. Luckily, nothing bad happened. It flies in the air, comes back down on the track. Pretty spectacular. Pretty crazy there wasn't more damage to his car.
I know. And I think I actually read this morning on motorsport.com that a fan got injured somehow by some of the debris that flew off the car. Not seriously, I don't believe, in any way that you would worry about their health. But someone did actually get hurt in that. All the debris flew everywhere. So you guess what happened next? We got a red flag.
I just completely forgot about the Magnussen thing. It was so late at night. I forgot that Kevin Magnussen caused
I just
that.
remember the flag happened. That was what I remember.
I woke up again. I was like, let's go. I was so excited.
The thing I remember most vividly is I hate when people use cliches on race broadcasts and they were like, this is a game of chess at 200 miles an hour. And I'm like,
obviously it's not. Stop. They're stopped in the pits.
They're not moving. And then quite literally the next day in the NASCAR race, this is a game of chess at 200 miles. I'm like, oh, I am so done with this. You know what this is? This is politics at 200 miles an hour.
This is Parcheesi.
Okay? Yes, we have Max Verstappen over the radio complaining about random things. We have George Russell like, tell Lewis not to drive so fast.
Yeah.
Like, it's politics at 200 miles an hour. Stop saying chess. Everybody says chess. Say something else. Anyway, Kevin Magnussen, he hit the wall.
This is Uno at 100 miles an hour.
I'm slapping the reverse card.
This is Connect 4. Yeah.
This is Connect 4.
It is actually more like Connect 4, I think, than chess. There's no en passants.
So we had this red flag fly, and the drivers immediately get on the horn, and they are having a time.
You need red flag.
Fernando Alonso, all caps, just yelling,
What?
and Hamilton asking, bless his heart,
Will they restart this?
oh, honey, you got a big storm coming. So we got some folks get some soft, fresh tires to head out for this last little stint if they restart, which they did. Piastri was P11 before the restart, and he was fighting for his first points. He was also one of the ones who got that tire change. Once again, it was a standing restart after a safety car lap, which essentially just left like a lap of racing with no DRS. Seems like a good finish. Seems good.
Yeah.
It was not.
It was not good because we still had more to go. On the restart, Carlos Sainz booped Fernando Alonso, and Alonso spun, which meant that Perez dipped into the gravel trap to avoid contact, and then Gasly clipped Ocon trying to avoid the collision, which led both Alpines to hit the wall, and they were done. The carnage also meant that both Aston Martins had fallen out of the points, both Alpines had wrecked, and Logan Sargent had smacked into the back of Nick DeVries, which meant both of those cars were out as well.
Yeah, so I think his crash in particular kind of highlights why everything else kind of fell apart in the first place. You see the T-cam from his angle as he's going down the track and smashes into the car in front of him. The sun is like in their eyes, and they mentioned this on the broadcast that normally the race doesn't go this late, and because of that, the sun is like setting and like it's like parallel with the track now, so you're just getting blasted with the sun when you're going into turn one. Not optimal for racing drivers.
If you can't feel the wind and drive with your eyes closed, you don't deserve to win the race.
Yeah.
You don't deserve to win the race.
You gotta drive by feel. Yeah.
You gotta feel the air. You gotta feel the cars around you. If you can't do that, that's too bad.
But yeah, pretty embarrassing mistake for the rookie Logan Sargent.
Yeah. Extremely. And then this leads us to this really weird time where everybody's kind of guessing and speculating what's going to happen.
It was the litigation period. What happened was the flag fell so soon after the restart that the FIA had no idea exactly how they were going to classify the order of the cars. Normally, we didn't even know if the race was going to be restarted. Honestly, we had one lap to go. Normally in this situation, after a restart, you would classify them based on the order at the last timing. So that would be the end of Sector 1. Well, like, did they hit Sector 1? Did they not hit Sector 1? No one was really sure. Definitely not all the cars hit Sector 1. So it was a matter of, like, who did and what counts. And it wasn't clear whether it would even be restarted. So the FIA's decision at that point could either determine the restart order or the finishing order, or both, probably both, which meant that there were so many different possibilities about the way that this race could go and end with literally like, the racing's done. We're done. Even if the cars go back on track, the racing part is over. We are now just basically deciding what happens.
Yeah, we're basically deciding the finishing order. So we're just having this period of time where everyone's like, what's going to happen? What's going on? Everybody's wondering, is Nico Hulkenberg going to get a podium? This would be the funniest possible way for Nico Hulkenberg to get a podium because, of course, not only do we have the order at the time of the safety car, the red flag, whatever, we also have the potential restart order, and we also have the potential penalties. So here we are, we come down pit lane, we're chilling. And the technical order at this point, as we understand it, is Max Verstappen in front, Lewis Hamilton in second, Carlos Sainz in third, and Nico Hulkenberg in fourth. This is after all of the carnage, right? And then we get word that, we're probably going to penalize Carlos Sainz with a 5-second penalty. If this order stays, a 5-second penalty would put Carlos Sainz behind Nico Hulkenberg. And Nico Hulkenberg, who has never gotten a podium and is most famous for never getting a podium, is maybe going to get a podium in the weirdest way possible. So everybody's freaking out. Like, our group chats are going wild. The internet's going wild if they're still awake, you know?
Yeah.
And then we find out that this is not what we're doing.
Nope. We are restarting based on the starting order of the previous restart, minus the cars that had crashed. But I had such a problem with this because we're not restarting because
we're just doing a parade lap.
A perfunctory parade lap because there's not enough time to do a safety car lap and then restart the cars. On Sky, they had this hilarious discussion about like why they actually had to go with the restart motions and drive the cars back out on the track because the FIA had already decided the finishing order. And ultimately, like the final consensus was, well, because you just got to finish the race. That was it.
You got to finish the race.
That was
like,
it. That was the only reason.
You got to get the cars back out there and do a safety car lap. Like,
I was so frustrated by this, though, because the FIA essentially decided that the previous restart was discounted and they were restarting. They were restarting the restart. But then, like, all of the cars had crashed. So what happened then? Like, what are you supposed to do with all the people who are out? And also now Carlos Sainz has a penalty because of what happened on the restart that we're not taking into account anymore.
Yeah, so this is really interesting because all these cars are out. So where they were, that's just gone. Because if you can't make the lap, then you don't finish, which was very interesting because I was like, oh, I wonder if anybody's going to have a mechanical issue on the parade lap and then they're going to lose their spot too. Like, it was a whole thing. If you couldn't do the parade lap, then you were done. So Carlos Sainz gets this penalty for the collision, and he is informed of this penalty.
So we have 5 seconds penalty.
No, it cannot be, Ricky. Do I deserve to be out of the points? No. No, it's unacceptable. Tell them, it is unacceptable. They need to wait until the race is finished and discuss with me. Please, ask them, please, to wait and discuss with me. Clearly the penalty is not deserved. It's too severe.
It honestly felt like watching a Shakespearean play. Like, the pacing at which he talks is so, like, scripted feeling, and it's just so sad. And so his team radios back, and they go, copy. Copy.
We know you're having a breakdown, but we're not going to do anything about it.
Copy. And like, you're seeing him in the car and he has his hands in his, like, his face in his hands, and he's like, no. And so they say copy, and he goes, no, please ask them to wait and discuss it with me. Clearly this penalty is not deserved. It is too severe. Ouch. Ouch.
Wow.
And it
awful.
is. And it is. And you know why? Because it's a 5-second penalty and they're not going to finish. They're all going to finish in a little bunch.
They're all going to finish in like the same 5 seconds. So he's going to finish last of all the cars on track. Like, it's not a real 5 seconds.
It should have been just like a place penalty or something, you know?
Honestly,
like
a starting place penalty for the next race. Something else.
Something.
Like,
because the
we
seconds
decide that you
the
drop
same.
down to 10th. I don't know. It was
it
was
pretty
awful.
Pretty harsh.
Yes, because to watch.
You know, if you lost 5 seconds in a normal like race interval, maybe you lose like 1 or 2 positions, right?
Yeah.
Maybe none. But he went all the way down to 12th, which was the last of the cars that finished the race, because only 12 cars finished the race. And like, I get it. And it's also weird because here we are saying, oh no, this restart didn't happen. We're reverting to before it happened, but also we're going to penalize Carlos, which, like, in theory, I get it. Like, it happened, but the order didn't happen. But also, what?
Yeah.
Very confusing.
I didn't get it. This was not the time, I don't think, to do the penalizing. The time to do the penalizing was waiting until after the race, discussing what happened, and then issuing a penalty for the next race in Baku.
Yeah, I agree. It was too weird.
But the weirdness wasn't over.
No. Is Nico Hulkenberg going to get a podium? What's going to happen?
No. Nico did not. He restarted in 7th.
Ouch.
We get back, we're doing this little parade lap, and there was one final FU red flag at the end. when Nico Hulkenberg himself he broke down at turn 2, but he still got to keep his 7th place finish despite the fact that he stopped and brought out a red flag. Did it even count? I'm not sure that one counted. I don't know what to think about that one.
Just a messy race.
It was a lot.
I after sleeping on it a couple days and being back in the stew, which is what I call my bedroom with my microphone. I think they should have restarted again for that last lap. They should have.
They should have gone NASCAR on it.
Yeah, they already looked like idiots anyway. Just lean into it.
Yeah,
Seriously,
they
though.
really
Seriously.
did. They looked really stupid.
I mean, you're not wrong at all.
That was the entire consensus online. Not saying that online is always right, but like everybody already thought the FIA looked stupid, and I thought it was embarrassing for them anyway. I was like, this is a clown show, but lean into it and give us an exciting result instead of like this weird, confusing thing where people are getting penalized and we're doing this lap again. Like it should have finished under a checkered flag at speed.
Yes.
If you're gonna, because look, they were already trying to give.
If you're
people,
not going to finish under a yellow, then you can't just like red flag it and try to make it green again and then have it red flagged again. Like you have to commit fully to it.
With that first restart, they were trying to give us that entertainment product and then got too scared and embarrassed and tried to do the proper like Fédération Internationale Automobile kind of like thing, the responsible thing to do. But it was too late for me. Just do it. They should have done it again. I think a couple more people would have crashed out, probably.
It didn't count, so we're going to roll the laps back again.
Added laps.
Just overtime. Just NASCAR overtime. It was like 3 o'clock.
When Formula E has a long safety car period or a red flag, they add laps to the end of their race. I don't understand why we can't do it. It's another FIA certified series. It's a top tier motorsport. Just give us 5 more.
Yeah.
I do think you see the downside of this, how this can go wrong in the eyes of a lot of viewers. Like we saw NASCAR at COTA. They had like 4 overtimes and they keep extending the race.
It was almost
and
10% of the race was.
It was like
almost 10% of the race laps were like redone at the end.
Yes, and like everybody's just like end it already. But the other side of that is the extreme side where we go, nope, it's over, and all the rules are murky anyway, and no one knows what's going on.
I understand. Okay, like, look, obviously, I get why they did it the safe way. It was more equipment was saved from harm, and it was a safe bet. But I don't know. I wanted.
We got a month until the next race.
Yes.
Just crash them.
Yes.
Just crash them. I totally agree.
You got time.
Just crash them. 100%.
Just crash them. All right. Well, that's the end of the race.
To sum it up.
Yeah.
To sum it up, the podium was Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, and Fernando Alonso, because we went back to that order from before the restart and we put Fernando back up there and then we penalized Carlos. And so Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, and Fernando Alonso. After that, we have Carlos Sainz's 5-second penalty, so he's all the way at the back. Lance Stroll is in 4th. Sergio Perez is in 5th. Lando Norris, then Nico Hulkenberg, then Oscar Piastri. First points. Wow.
All right.
Zhou Guanyu and Yuki Tsunoda, they finished out the points. Then we have Valtteri, and then we have Carlos. And that is 12 drivers, because only 12 drivers finished the race.
The only redeemable quality of the day, for most of us at least, for me, was fastest lap and driver of the day went to Sergio Perez. After he reached P5, despite starting on the pit lane. I thought that was a pretty good performance. Like, he did have a slow start, but all things considered, he did well to avoid the chaos. He was, like, in the throes of it almost every single time they had a restart. This man did fine. Our DNFs, get ready. Get ready for our list. Charles Leclerc, Alex Albon, George Russell, Kevin Magnussen, Logan Sargent, Nick DeVries, our beautiful Stebby Ocon, and Pierre Gasly.
Stebby. That was so sad.
Wow.
That was awful.
So
taken out by your own teammate.
That sucks. Yeah. Oh, and honorable mention to Ottmar Schnaufnauer. getting a lot of airtime this weekend. And then, dude, they put him on the spot with an interview right after the crash. And Otmar's like,
that was so funny.
Otmar is so like polite and like, I think just an optimist that he's like trying to really not sound incredibly pissed off about his drivers crashing each other out. Oh, it was so funny. But
it was
just
so
sucked.
good.
That was pretty incredible. Going forward after this race, we've got a few weeks, unfortunately, until our next race. The teams will have time to recollect and rebuild their cars.
And hopefully the FIA has time to sit down and think.
Yeah, that too. Jeez.
Have a long, hard think about yourself.
Yeah. Go think about what you did, FIA. All right.
Go think about that.
It's time for the boyfriend of the week. You know how it goes. This is our chance to tell you who's the best, in our opinion. This is middle school rules. Our relationships don't last that long in middle school.
No,
so
don't.
This is only for the week. Who's good enough to be our boyfriend this week? I will round it off, okay? Or not round it off. I will start us off here.
Start it off.
My boyfriend of the week is Supervisor George Russell. Who you got to see during that red flag period near the end. He had already been out of the race for a few laps now. He's changed into his casual clothes, but he posts up right next to the Red Bull of Max Verstappen. He's taking a good hard look at that car, just keeping an eye on things, making sure those mechanics are just, tightening those bolts, polishing things off. It was so funny to see George do this.
Good.
He got a lot of screen time in his supervisor role. The foreman, George Russell, we'll call him. It was so funny. I loved it. He had his little sunglasses on. I really became a big fan of George this weekend. I mean, he's an on and off guy of mine, but like he was so funny. He was in rare form this weekend. I loved it.
He really was.
He was great.
You know what was the funniest part of George Russell this weekend? He's out of the race, right? And he logs on Twitter and he tweets, "When it's not your day, it's not your day."
Hey.
And then someone quote tweets it with a photo of Will Buxton on Drive to Survive.
That's like, yeah.
What a wild thing to say after you just climbed out of your fiery car. What an understatement.
The joke with Will Buxton, of course, is that on Drive to Survive, he'll say, "When you qualify last, you start last in the race." And he just like repeats himself.
He's a big fan of circular logic. Drivers, I think, have such a weird way of, they're not very online, I think. But that is like the race car driver way of saying, it is what it is,
It is what it is.
What it do.
Yeah. So anyway, George Russell, boyfriend of the week for me. Who wants to go next?
My boyfriend of the week this week is the ghost of Charlie Whiting, who I am sure is rolling in his grave. If you are newer to F1, Charlie Whiting was the F1 race director for absolute ages, and he died kind of surprisingly just before the 2019 Australian Grand Prix. There was still chaos.
Was it that long
under
ago
Whiting's
already?
Motorsport. It was that long ago.
Yeah,
Pre-pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah. So Whiting died. It's not been the same since then. There was still chaos under his rule, but his presence guaranteed a consistent enforcement of rules and a consistent interpretation of the FIA rulebook that at least we could all rely upon. And when he said things, I was like, I believe you, sir. You have the weight, the authority, like you carry yourself with a confidence that I trust. I do not have the same trust in anyone else at all. Michael Massey, throw him away. Whoever was at the race this weekend, throw them away. We don't need any of these people. What a race. What a freaking,
It was
had
rough.
to stop myself from swearing. I got so head up about this. My boyfriend of the week is Charlie Whiting, because honest to God, like if that man was still here, Abu Dhabi 2021 wouldn't have happened. This race wouldn't have happened this way. It's a shambles. It's a shambles. My heart goes out to him. I'm sure he's haunting Michael Massey as we speak.
I started out my week thinking that Max Verstappen in a wig would be my boyfriend of the week.
Oh, yeah.
Because Max Verstappen put on a blonde wig and like,
you mean
he
Taylor
was looking
Swift?
kind of cute. Yeah, he looked like Taylor Swift. Like he had like this shoulder length blonde wig on, and he put his little Red Bull cap on top of his wig. And like that's just not a thing you usually see from Max Verstappen. I bet his dad spoke to him after that.
Yeah.
I bet he got a talking to.
I agree.
That was going to be my boyfriend of the week, and it still might be. But then I started watching the broadcast, and Jenson Button was on the Formula One broadcast. And as I have mentioned, Jenson Button ran the NASCAR race a week ago. And Jenson Button has gone full NASCAR. So he is on this broadcast, and they had, during one of the practice sessions, they were having GPS issues. And nobody was going the right way. Like, it was funny. So they're having GPS issues, and Jenson goes, you know what? You know what they have in NASCAR? Spotters. The spotters tell you where you are. They tell you where everybody else is too. I'm going to go to the driver's meeting, and I'm going to suggest that we get spotters. It's really therapeutic to have spotters. They tell you where you're at. And like, he's just on board. Like, he's doing his whole thing.
This is so funny because I interviewed Jenson during that weekend, and I was talking to him about, so he was upset that the cars, like when you're on a fast lap in NASCAR,
they don't get out of the way.
Don't have to move out of the way. So he's telling me, I'm gonna go to the driver's meeting and I'm gonna see who yells at me, because I'm gonna tell them that they have to move out of the way, because that's just etiquette. I love this man is just now dedicated to going to driver's meetings and causing chaos.
And so he's talking about the NASCAR race, and he's like, spotters, spotters, spotters. We need spotters. We need spotters. And then at a different point, they were asking him about the race, and they were like, yeah, what was going on? He was like, lots of door banging. And I think it was Crofty responds, you got to get your elbows out next time. And I was just like, this is so funny. Like, this is quite literally the goofiest thing I've ever heard. And I really loved it. So it's a tie between Max in a wig and Jenson talking about spotters.
Hell yeah.
NASCAR rookie, Jenson Button.
Thank you so much for listening to the Donut Racing Show. We'll be back next week to talk about some of the wild sponsorships we've seen in previous seasons of Formula One.
In the meantime, make sure to subscribe and tell all your friends to tune in to the Donut Racing Show. And if you want to leave us a 5-star and kindly worded review, it really helps us out. Thank you.
If you're not familiar with Donut, we have a YouTube channel as well as an automotive history podcast called Past Gas. So make sure you go check both of those out. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at Donut Racing Show. If you want to follow Alanis, she is Alanis N. King on Twitter and Instagram. Nolan is Nolan J. Sykes on both. And I, confusingly, am Eliz_Blackstock on Twitter and Elize Blackstock on Instagram. I've tried to fix it. It won't happen. Thank you for listening.
Bye!